friends, welcome to Eden Hope Academy. We are on cycle 1, week 4, and you've already gotten some great art projects done with your kids. For this week, try to really make sure that you have the decorum of your class. Make sure everyone, if they're talkers, and split them up maybe. Remind the students that this is a time for quiet working. Have some of that Eden Hope music playing in the background because that's something that everyone is familiar with. Everyone knows the words to by now, and it kind of helps them to relax. Just listen to that and work. And explain the history first, and then have them do the projects. And also remember that our projects at Eden Hope Academy are about tactile, feeling what they're doing, working with the different materials that they probably haven't worked with before, and exploring. So even if the students don't do it correctly, that's great because they're learning so much by just the process of doing the projects. So for this week, we're talking about Chinese writing. And so you're going to go back in history a little bit with your children, talk to them about Adam and Eve, the 2 trees in the garden, the tree of life, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and that Eve wanted something that she thought was good. She wanted to be like God. She wanted her eyes opened. And so that led to the banishment from the garden. And then you had that played out again and again and again. You had it played out with Cain and Abel. Cain thought that God would want what was good, and it sparked in him a desire to do evil. And that happens again and again and again. When we decide that we want to not be with the tree of life and we're trying to be with the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil always leads to death. So then we get to Methuselah, then we get to his grandson Noah. They are 8 people on a boat. And then we finally get, and Noah's landed. There's many children after him. And eventually they decide that they want to sit under the wrong tree again, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And they decide they want the knowledge of being with God or with that high up so they can talk to God face to face. And so they build the Tower of Babel. God destroys the Tower of Babel, and people spread, and they have all of these languages. Now, what's interesting about that is a relatively short period of time, just about 500 years after the Tower of Babel, there is writing. They have dated writing in a Chinese temple. And in that writing, it's right in the children's books, and it says, and we've read it also in the video, but it talks about Shang-Di and how Shang-Di created the universe and how it was out of nothing, and Shang-Di created it. And we talk about how that Shang-Di sounds like the Hebraic El Shaddai. It's very similar to that word. And the stories match almost perfectly. So the Chinese people were monotheistic. They believed in one God, and they believed that this God caused a flood. They believed that this God wanted them to listen to him. They believed that there was temptation. They had all kinds of beliefs, and we know this because they're written on some of the walls of their most ancient temples. And then Confucius, years later, who we're going to talk about, wrote about it. And then also, it's today, Chinese people today use these symbols in their everyday writing, and many of them aren't even aware of it. So in our book, you learned about boat equals vessel plus 8 mouths, or 8 people, and that would be Noah and the 8 people on the boat. Some of the other ones that you have on your sheets in here, so you're going to give each child a sheet, and or each group of children, each group of like maybe 2 or 3 students will receive a Chinese writing sheet. And then you're also going to have just normal paper as well as some cardstock paper. So you're going to hand out, so you're going to hand out just some, oh, my chair is wiggly. You're going to hand out some just scratch paper or some of the roll of paper that you have first, and let them try and practice. And then you're going to hand out the nicer paper a little bit later. And each one of these you're going to talk to about the students before you hand it to a group of students. And you're going to say tempter. Tempter is secret man in a garden who's alive, a devil, and then plus the sign for devil trees cover equals tempter. And so, or the devil is a secret man in a garden who's alive. That's pretty cool. And then the devil plus trees and cover, like clothing cover, is a tempter or a temptation. That is pretty cool. That is directly related back to the Bible. So the next one that you're going to hand out is garden. And this is actual, when Chinese people today write garden, they use this character. And garden is dust plus mouth or breath, two, and in an enclosure. So that's dust, breath, two, and an enclosure. So who would that be? That would be Adam and Eve. Remember one of our first weeks we talked about how the Garden of Eden was enclosed by 4 rivers, the Tigris, the Euphrates, the Gishon, and the Pishon. And then you have, so this would be the enclosure around it. So students will stand for this, and they will use paint brushes, and they will paint each of these. So the next one is complete or finish, and that is 2 people is the first, 2 plus people is the first. So then this symbol for the first plus home is complete. Pretty cool. So 2 people like Adam and Eve would be complete. And then to create is 2 people and first. And I think that's all we have. So it's so fun to see these. You can also look up others if you'd like to, or I'll put some other ones up above here to show you. And then to have the ink is super fun. So students are, and this is so messy, and I just warn you in advance. And if you choose to do the charcoal for some of it and maybe some black paint for the littles, I would totally understand, because this is quite messy. But this is how the Chinese people did the writing, and so that's what we're doing. So we have a bag of charcoal here for you, and you'll get out your handy dandy mortar and pestle, and the students will grind the charcoal in here, and then they'll add just a tiny bit of water and mix it up, and that will be their paint. So have a wonderful time with this activity. Remember to save the better paper until they've gotten more used to it at the end. And remember, when they're doing their calligraphy, they stand for this activity, and have them talk about these symbols and the characters, and talk about how so many Chinese people believe that, that the God of the universe, that Jesus Christ, is not for them. But really, if they look into their own writing, they'll realize that, yeah, he is. That the original people who settled China were monotheistic and believed in the one God, the creator of the universe. So thank you so much. I'm so glad that you are doing this. I'm so glad that it's going well for you. And please reach out to me if you need advice or thoughts, or if you need something changed. Thanks so much.